morning. I'm here. Let's see. Probably should put this microphone on. That might help. I got too many things going on this morning. So I'm drinking coffee out of this Ninja mug. It's a pretty goofy thing, but it comes with its own mask. So, but you know, you take the mask off the Ninja, and what's underneath? More Ninja. It's like that joke about Chuck Norris. It's like, what's inside of Chuck Norris's fist? Another fist. So, underneath the mask of the Ninja, there's more Ninja. I don't know where his face is, but he's got his own little mask. Let me see if I can put this on the coffee mug. This was a gift from one of my students. So, coffee, Ninja, and underneath the mask, more Ninja. Oh, it also comes with a little stirrer, just in case. So, good morning. So, let's see. I did one Periscope broadcast that seemed to go okay. I made some mistakes. And this is my second Periscope, so hopefully I'll make less mistakes, but you never know. It's all a work in progress. I see a few people have logged on already, and I appreciate you joining me this morning. I titled this Bujinkan Ask Me Anything, same as last time, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those. Otherwise, I'll just ramble on for a little bit and wake myself up on a Sunday morning. Some of you might have missed the Ninja mug, but I can't get enough of this silly thing. Actually, what I really like is the coffee inside. Yeah, look out. Watch out for the Ninja in the morning. So let's see. I got some Twitter notifications. You can leave a comment on the Periscope app if you'd like, or on my Twitter account, I guess. I'll try to pay attention to either or both. Since I'm new to this Periscope thing, I might be awkward at it, but I'll try. If you don't know me, my name is Michael Glenn, and I've been in the Bujinkan for maybe 30 years. I started in the 1980s, and I've been training. I took a break when I was going to college, but for most of that time, I haven't stopped training. And I go to Japan to train with Hatsumi Sensei twice or 3 times every year, and so maybe I can answer questions for some of you who haven't had the chance to do that, or you just want to share or talk about training. That would be fun. Let's see. So on my on the Bujinkan Twitter, I will find one of the tweets and maybe we can discuss that. Recently, I leave on the Bujinkan Twitter, I leave a lot of quotes from Hatsumi Sensei. These are quotes that, for the most part, that I've heard personally when I've been training with him. The translations are not all mine. Some are mine. I'm not really good at Japanese, so I only do translating when I feel like I need to go a little deeper than the translators are doing in the dojo that day. But usually the translators in the dojo do a very good job, but it's a difficult job because Hatsumi Sensei, he's teaching quickly. He speaks very quickly and on the fly, and he makes a lot of obscure references, literary references, training references. The Japanese language is hard enough to translate into English, but when you're also having to deal with obscure martial arts terms, literary references, art references, things from the past that modern Japanese never discuss or don't use the words for, that makes things very challenging for translators. I'm friends with a number of the translators there in the dojo, and I try to make an effort after class to go up and thank them, because it's a difficult job, and they're not being paid to do it. It's just a voluntary thing that they do to benefit the rest of us in the dojo. Anyhow, so these tweets that I post here on the Bujinkan Twitter are a lot of times they're quotes from Soke that I was in the class when he said them. So let's see. A recent one I posted here is Soke says, "When I say to make everything zero, that actually is a point. Don't think that zero means nothing. You have to make each point zero." The day that I was in the class and he said that, it was quite interesting. He often will. Someone will, in the dojo, Hizuke, will attack at him, and he'll do something that looks very strange. A lot of times it looks like nothing. It looks like he's not doing much, and then his opponent or Hizuke will react as if he was punched or kicked or something very threatening affected him, and it's hard for someone just watching to see what actually occurred, and the reason is because what occurs is not something that is always physical. It's yes, Hatsumi Sensei is doing a physical movement, but the movement is not a direct correlation with how the opponent reacts to it. That's because Soke is he's affecting something larger than just the physical opponent. He's affecting the opponent's psychology. He's affecting the space around. So in this quote he says, "When I say to make everything zero, that actually is a point." Well, that day in the dojo, in the class, Hatsumi Sensei, the attack came in, and he moved to a point in the space with his hand in a way that it affected the space around it. This was a point that you could consider zero because there was nothing there, but he was affecting everything around it, the opponent's psychology, the shape of the space around his movement. And so if you understand, or if you've heard of something called Jupo Seisho, when you come to that point, then 10 variations can proceed from there. This is the idea of Jupo Seisho. 10 changes can happen from that point. So in the quote he says, I make everything zero, but that actually is a point. Don't think that zero means nothing. And so this 0 point in the kukan there, it doesn't mean nothing because it is full of potential. There are 10 possibilities. When we say Jupo Seisho, Jupo means like 10 ways, right? But it's really infinite. The word Jupo has that implication to it of something that's infinite. It's more than 10. So 0 doesn't mean nothing because this empty point in space is full of potential. It's almost infinite variety of things can happen from there. And Hatsumi Sensei said, he continued to say, you have to make each point zero. So a number of years ago, we were studying Gyokoro Koshi Jitsu as part of the yearly theme, and Hatsumi Sensei that year was talking about these points, and he was referring to each point as koshi. They're like little jewels or stars in space, and he made a very obscure reference, which is that this is like he called it the something similar to the net of Indra, and this is a very obscure reference to Buddhism and Hinduism. But the net of Indra is something that goes through all of reality, and at each point in the net, there are these little jewels, or koshi, as Hatsumi Sensei said. So when you're making each point 0, you are at that point that's full of potential that can go in 10 directions, jupo, right? So let's say you proceed along one direction, well then you come to another point, and then that point becomes the new 0. It's the new jewel, the new koshi. And he talked about moving from point to point and capturing these koshi. That's a pretty advanced idea, and maybe more than you want to hear when you're trying to defend yourself against a punch or a kick. But this is the kind of training that Hatsumi Sensei does. He often mentions that he's teaching to the Jugodans and above. I don't know what's above Jugodan, but he always he used to say, "I'm teaching to the Godans and above." Then when there were lots of Godans and a handful of Judans, he would say, "I'm teaching to the Judans and above." Then there became a huge amount of Judans in the world, and just a handful of Jugodans. So he started to say he's teaching to the Jugodans, and that's where it's at nowadays. He always tells us he's teaching to the Jugodans. And so for the rest of everyone who's in the dojo who isn't a Jugodan, that's okay. He says he's teaching to the Jugodans, but everybody there has a chance to absorb his feeling, and they may not quite understand what he's doing or his approach, but they're absorbing the feeling that they can hold inside themselves for later, and use it as they gain more experience in training, or when they go back home to their own dojo. It's something they can explore. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling because I'm drinking my Ninja coffee this morning. Oops, the Ninja's mask fell off. But don't forget, underneath the Ninja's mask, there's just more Ninja. I'm sorry, but I continue to be amused by stupid things. This mug came with its own Ninja mask. How cool is that? So yeah. All right. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody pop up with a question or a comment yet. Here's somebody on Twitter. This person says, during training, does anyone ever end up on the losing end of an exchange? Yeah, that happens pretty much every time you train. One thing that people don't understand about our training is that there is 50% of your training is being the uke. A lot of people shortchange themselves on that part of training. Being the uke is not just about being thrown around by the other guy, or being punched by the other guy, or being the or allowing the other guy to practice the kata or the technique. Being the uke teaches many things. It teaches how to be an attacker. So if you're learning how to be aggressive or be an attacker, that's one place it starts. You're the uke, so usually you are the one initiating the attack in class. So that's a chance for you to learn how to be an attacker, how to deliver an effective attack, an attack that is real. A lot of people skip over that, and they kind of just go through the motions, and they just throw a lazy punch, or lazily go through the steps of the kata so their partner can work on the technique or the throw. Another thing about being an uke, which goes to your question or your point, is that as the uke, your designated role, I guess, in the class is that you're going to lose, generally. So that's not an unfortunate thing or a bad thing or a mistake that people make, I think, when they are uke, is that they just automatically assume the role of the loser before the kata has even begun, or before it's finished. And you should not do that. You should, as the attacker, as the aggressor in the exchange, you should approach it as if there's a chance for you to win. And you should be looking for opportunities to counter. You should be looking for holes or weaknesses in your partner's technique. You should be looking for avenues of escape. You should be looking for opportunity. And so as the technique progresses, you are put in various situations that are not great for you, because your opponent, he's the Tory in this exchange, and he's the designated winner, I guess, of the technique. But as he's moving through the technique, he's putting you in compromising positions and situations. And this is a wonderful opportunity to learn how to be on the losing end of things, and what the possibilities are for you to flip that and turn that around. When we get into more advanced training, there's something that is called randori, which is kind of a free training. And when you do a randori or a free training, that's a chance for either person to turn things around. That training is very advanced, and you have to have training partners that you trust, and they have to trust you. Otherwise, somebody will be injured. So it is something that is important in training. I think that might go to the heart of your question about anyone losing up on the ending. About anyone ending up on the losing end of an exchange. So hopefully this answer addresses that. If not, you can amplify your question again. But yeah, sometimes we lose. And Hatsui Sensei, there's a quote that I love of his. He said this many years ago in class, but it was an interesting thing. There was a technique where the opponent was supposed to take a lock on the person, and Hatsumi Sensei let the guy take the lock on him. So from the outside, it looked like the other guy was winning, and Hatsumi Sensei was losing. And he said, in that moment, he said, you want to let the opponent have what they want. Give them what they want. Let them have it. And so when you let them have the lock, in this case, when he let the guy have the lock, it was really a setup or a trap that led to the guy's defeat. So winning and losing are flip sides of one another. One can turn into the other very quickly. Let's see. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad this answer helped a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned you didn't know how Soke conducts training. Hatsumi Sensei's training is kind of unique to him. Sometimes people go to his dojo in Japan and they see the way he teaches, or the way he runs his class, and they think they should go back home and do their class the same way. I don't think that's really a realistic or great approach to it. Hatsumi Sensei, like I said earlier in this video, he says he's teaching to the Jugodans, right? So when you go back home, even if you're a Jugodan like I am, right, you go back home to the dojo, usually there's not any Jugodans in the dojo among your students. Sometimes there may be, but for the most part there aren't. So you shouldn't be conducting your classes the way Hatsumi Sensei conducts his classes. Your classes should be something that are teaching basics, teaching form, teaching the basic things that everyone needs to learn in the Bujinkan to grow. And if you're lucky, if your students are lucky, you are also trying to share the feeling that you get from Hatsumi Sensei in Japan. And that should come out through the exploration of basics, the study of form. You shouldn't go directly to just running your class the way Hatsumi Sensei runs his class. That probably is a mistake, unless you have a dojo full of Jugodans that are studying with you. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, we go to Japan for that, right? So that's not something you should be teaching in your own dojo. My ninja bug. Yeah, so yeah, training is interesting like that. People go to Japan and they get inspired, and I do too, right? And then you come home and you want to share that inspiration. And the reality is, if I come home and I try to teach about the jeweled net of Indra, like I spoke about in this video earlier, to my students, that's all great, but if they don't even know how to punch, or they're struggling with even remembering the steps of a kata that we're looking at that night, those advanced ideas are not going to be that helpful in that moment. So in my own classes, I include all of those advanced things, but I weave them into the very grounded training of studying form, studying technique, learning how to do the basics. And even for someone like me who's been training since the 80s, I never stop learning from the basics. I am completely happy to be in a class where I'm just studying a basic punch, or spending the whole class learning about rolling, or sanshin, or kihon. I can study those things and never get bored. So, let's see. My throat is a little scratchy this morning. I think the ninja mug is fighting against me. It's October now and the fall is hitting, and I think there's a lot of allergies going around for people. I didn't see if anyone else has a question here. Otherwise, no questions. I'll just keep rambling a little bit. I want to share an interesting story. You may be familiar with these exercise balls. People use these to meditate. They use them to keep their hands agile. Well, Hatsumi Sensei one year came to class with a bag of walnuts, and he was using them in class. He was attacking his opponents with the walnuts, and he mentioned that in our training, these walnuts are supposed to be used this way. My cat is very fascinated with the walnuts. Yeah. He heard the scratchy sound of these walnuts and he came running. But these walnuts are Japanese walnuts, and I was given these by one of the teachers in Japan. They picked them up off the ground. We were training outdoors that year, and these walnuts are quite fierce. I don't know if you can see the tip on that, but it is very pointy and sharp. So Soke was using these to fight with, and I can tell you these are needle sharp. So these walnuts become more than just a walnut, and when you're trying to use them in your hands like this to exercise with, it's very difficult. They're scratchy, they're rough, pointy, so to do that smoothly like you would with a metal is almost impossible. Hello, Max. Max is over here studying the walnuts. All right. So yeah, that's quite interesting. I haven't seen these type of walnuts in America. Maybe they exist somewhere, but the point on these is very severe. I don't know if you can see that, but if I push hard enough, it would draw blood. That's how intense these are. So yeah, in Japan you learn a lot of things, unexpected lessons that appear. So Bujinkan asked me anything. Anybody have a comment or a question? I'm just waking up today. I woke up reasonably early, and then I was doing some writing and training notes, but it took me a while to get the Periscope going, so I don't see any comments or mentions on Twitter at the moment, but I'll just keep rambling. We can look at another tweet from the Bujinkan account. Let's see. Hatsumi Sensei, he in one class I was at, he said the last kanji of Heijo Shin can be sincerity. So, you know, Japanese kanji have different pronunciations depending on the context, and he often likes to do wordplay. So if you're writing Heijo Shin, the last kanji can be written as sincerity, which is Makoto. I think he actually wrote a scroll for me with that. And so his quote about this was that the last kanji of Heijo Shin can be sincerity, and he said you just know at the moment of the attack where to move, and then you use this as a pivot. This is a very interesting concept. The ability to know how to evade an attack is not something that should be done with a conscious mind. When you're beginning in training, it's difficult, right? Your teacher teaches you to evade at a certain angle, or to use a particular footwork or step to evade an attack. That's something that you need to do when you're beginning or starting out with training. But at more advanced levels of training, it's important that you're not thinking about how to evade. Hatsumi Sensei often tells us, he repeats this over and over and over in class, and I think he repeats it so much because people aren't getting it. He says, "Don't evade, don't evade." You know, he says when the strike comes in or the attack comes in, you shouldn't evade, and that's really confusing. because you think from a very practical standpoint, well, I need to get out of the way of the attack, right, or I'm going to get hit. But he's talking about when he says don't evade, he's talking about don't evade from here, right? Because if you think about how to evade the attack that's coming in, and then you evade, you take your evasion, well, that process is too complicated and it takes too long. And if you go through that chain, that process, your opponent will read it. They'll read that you're thinking about how to evade or maneuver in that moment. And so their attack may not be real. They'll use that against you. So it also is just too slow. If you think about how to evade, well, I see this punch coming in, I'm going to step back 45 degrees this way and then use a block, right? If you're thinking that and then you do it, by the time you've gone through those layers, it's too late. And it's also so predictable. When I'm against an opponent and I see that going on, I know exactly where they're going. I can counter it so easily. I don't even need to see them thinking about it. I can feel it in their body. I can feel their evasion taking place. And so I know where they're going to be before they're there. And that's that's going to lead to their defeat. So from our side, he says, the last kanji of Heijoshin is sincerity. And you just know at the moment of attack where to move. Heijoshin has to do with this very calm state of mind, having an equanimity. If you have a feeling of Heijoshin when you're being attacked, the attacks are not concerning to you. They don't bring fear. They don't disturb you mentally. So if the attack comes in, it doesn't make you jump, right? Because you have Heijoshin. And if you change the last kanji of Heijoshin to sincerity or makoto, because of your sincerity, your presence, your state of mind is such that you're not pre-decided on how to evade. You're not thinking, how can I defeat this opponent? How can I win? Or how can I make them lose? You're being very sincere in that moment, and your sincerity protects you. And if you can use this sincerity and use it as a pivot point, as Hatsumi says in that quote, you'll just evade naturally. The attack will be inconsequential to you. It comes in and you just float on by, right? It's like trying to punch a butterfly, right? You punch at it and the butterfly just floats right by the punch. So having that Heijoshin in combat is so important. And if you can understand the idea of sincerity protecting you and being a pivot point, that can take you really far in training and in life, because ultimately these lessons are really about life. We study punching and kicking and fighting, but most of us are not going out every day and doing combat. So we have to reflect on these lessons in the dojo and bring them into our lives. Anyway, I'm rambling, so let's see if anybody has a response or a question. If you have a question, you can do the chat in Periscope, or you can go on to Twitter and leave me a comment or a response. Otherwise, I'll just keep rambling. This is my second time doing Periscope, and I think it's useful. to be able to chat with the Bujinkan community. People don't often get to hang out with their instructors and just shoot the breeze, right? If you do, if you have an instructor like that you can just hang out with and shoot the breeze, you should consider yourself very lucky. That is a very important relationship in life and one that you should value. And don't, if you have the opportunity to hang out with your instructor outside of class, you shouldn't take that for granted. You should value that moment highly and and treat it with the importance that it has in your life. It's difficult for students and instructors to be friends because the student-instructor relationship is one that you know, has a natural imbalance. You know, the student comes to class and they're trying to learn, but they also are hoping they can get rank from their instructor. So there's a natural imbalance there, right? And yeah, my ninja mug. So someone's being rude in Periscope. If you guys, I don't know how to do the moderation yet on Periscope, but I think you guys can moderate as well and block people. So yeah, so having those kind of relationships and conversations with your instructor, if you have that kind of friendship, that can be really wonderful, and you shouldn't take it for granted. I've been fortunate to have that sort of relationship with my own instructors, and it's something that I've always found really valuable. Okay, so I just blocked somebody. Somebody from Iowa who apparently is insecure. Hopefully not everyone from Iowa is insecure like that, but it's funny the kind of people who will troll a Periscope account. Very strange thing to do, but trolling in general is a strange phenomenon, right? I'm of an age where I was able to be on the internet when the internet first started, and back in the late 80s, early 90s, one of the things I discovered about the internet back then, when it very first started, is there were like instant trolls. That was just the nature of the internet right from the beginning. So yeah, what are you gonna do? I don't think it's ever gonna go away. It's gonna be around as long as we have humans. All right, so let's see. I can keep rambling, or if you guys have questions, feel free to leave a little note at Periscope or a mention on Twitter. Let's see where I'm at. I'm just looking at some of these quotes from Hatsumi Sensei that I've posted on Twitter. As I said earlier, almost all these quotes that I post are quotes from classes that I was at. I've been fortunate that I go 2 or 3 times every year to go train with Hatsumi Sensei, and while I'm there, I'm usually there for 2 weeks at a time, and I try to squeeze in as many classes as I can. And I take notes, right? So it gives me a lot to work on when I come home in between trips. I usually have 3 or 4 months in between each trip, and I have a lot of material to work on from my studies with Hatsumi Sensei and the Japanese Shihan. They all give me so much inspiration and material to study when I come home. And my students, you could say they're the beneficiaries of that, but they also sometimes are unlucky because I come home and I'm trying to understand something I learned in Japan, so they're my guinea pigs, right? I try these things out on them. I guess it's lucky because they get to experience some of what I experienced in Japan, but it's unlucky because I'm trying something new that I don't even understand yet, and they get the pain of that. So, but that's how it is. You know, the lineage of teacher to student has always been that way, and I think it will always continue to be that way. I don't know if anybody has a question. I'll look at one of these tweets here. Okay, here's another quote from Hatsumi Sensei. I think this was in a class last April that I was at with him. He said, don't show any feeling or intention here. If you try too hard, you won't be able to do the next thing. Have no intention of injuring or hurting. So this is something that is very difficult to learn. When you are in combat, whether it be grappling or striking, any type of combat, if you have an intention of winning the fight or causing injury or harm to that other person, that intention is very transparent. The other person can read it, they can pick up on it. It's something that we've all evolved to do through nature. Animals can do this, right? They can sense when there's something dangerous coming their way. And so if you're in a fight and you put out that intention of winning or trying or wanting to win, wanting to injure, wanting to cause harm to the other person, that's something they will read and pick up on. And if they can read and pick up on it, they're going to try to counter it. They're going to try to escape, evade, or counter you. And if they are more skilled than you are, it's going to work. They're going to win. They're going to turn the tables on you and beat you. So Soke says, don't show any feeling or intention. If you try too hard, you won't be able to do the next thing. So if you're showing a feeling or intention of doing a technique or causing harm or winning, you won't be able to do the next thing because you've given too much to that moment. You've invested too much into that one move, that one technique, that one strike, and when you put too much into that one moment, you get stuck there. It becomes a trap. It's like going for a knockout punch, right? To knock somebody out in a fight, it requires one of two things, right? It's either luck, or you have to swing for the fences, right? You have to really put everything into this moment, into this strike. And if you put everything into it, all of yourself into this knockout strike, well, you miss, and then you're kind of just left hanging. There's no no chance for you to recover, or by the time you do recover, the opponent has escaped or moved on or countered. So that's a very important concept. If you do everything without intention, you don't have any intention of causing harm or winning, then you can be zero. And so the opponent won't be able to pick up on what you're trying to do. They won't be able to counter your technique because there's nothing there to counter. Again, this is another advanced concept from Hatsumi Sensei, and it's not something that is easily come by. But you can try it in your next class in the dojo. Try to do a technique without intention, and see where that takes you. You might be surprised at the results. Just like you might be surprised by my ninja mug. Look, underneath the mask, there's another ninja. A ninja coffee mug. What else is there, right? Okay, so I've done a lot of rambling here. I don't know if anybody else has a question before I log off. But hopefully those of you who have watched this got a few of my stories from Japan and enjoyed my morning ramble. Okay, so I guess I'll call it a day.